Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Glad to see more than 100 people who've tuned in for this session. I'm Siddharth Agarwal, Principal at Matrix Partners India, leading a consumer tech investments across B2C marketplaces and consumer brands. We are very pleased to partner with the Boston Consulting Group for the launch of our report on the future of Indian consumer tech. We're starting this today with the first of 3 panel discussions, post which we will release the report in April. We at Matrix Partners India are very bullish on the Indian consumer internet ecosystem with all the building blocks in place. India's GDP is projected to double over the next decade, and the GDP per capita will rise subsequently. The thing to note here is that with the rise of GDP per capita, the disposable income explodes and unlocks consumption. We're a young nation with the second largest internet user base, with each user consuming about 20 gigabytes of data. And we've got a great logistics and payments infrastructure. All these building blocks provide a wonderful opportunity for entrepreneurs in India to build consumer tech businesses. We at Matrix have been privileged to have a ringside view of many such companies in the ecosystem, such as Ola, Daily Hunt, Dealshare, Country Delight, and many more. We have the privilege of having some of these entrepreneurs in the panel today. Over to Nimisha from BCG for her introduction.
Great. Thanks, Siddharth, and good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. In an environment where there is so much Zoom fatigue, it's fantastic to see that we have over 100 listeners. So great to see you all. I'm Nimisha Jain. I'm a senior partner with BCG. I lead our marketing and sales practice across all of Asia Pacific. I work a lot in the consumer and tech spaces, but what I'm most passionate about is the whole growth tech ecosystem, especially the consumer tech space in India. And I'm really excited about this report that we're doing with Matrix Partners. As Siddharth was describing, this is we've been working quite hard over the last few months to put this together. It's a report that, as part of which, we've spoken to over 20 founders. We've done a survey with close to 50 founders. And we've also looked in detail at some of the big trends that will reshape the consumer tech space in India going forward. And also, gotten a lot of very detailed reflections from them and very insightful reflections on what it took to get to the, to go through the 0 to 10 journey, but also in the scale up from 10 to 100. So today is a part 1 of a 3-part series where we the report. We'll talk to you in a minute about what we're going to be discussing today, and then we're going to culminate this in a in-person reveal of the actual report, which happens, sometime next month. Just to kick us off, maybe, let me start to introduce, a really, really incredible panel that we have today. And I'm sure you're going to really enjoy the conversation. Gaurav, let me start with you first. I've known Gaurav for some time now. We've had very intense discussions on how the e-com landscape in India has been is evolving. Gaurav, comes with a legacy of a lot of experience across, many FMCG companies. He's currently at L'Oreal. He's worked with BP and PepsiCo and worked across not just India, but various markets in Europe, Singapore, Indonesia. And currently is the head of digital, and so he's chief digital and marketing officer at L'Oreal. L'Oreal is an organization that's really been at the forefront of taking on the e-commerce as well as digital marketing, both globally and in India. And we thought, while we're talking consumer tech, it would be good to have someone coming in from a slightly different perspective, a offline first organization, but who's adopted e-commerce really rapidly. So Gaurav, very excited to have you and to hear your perspective.
Thanks a lot, Nimisha. I'm very happy to be here.
Next up, we've got Sourjyendu Medda. He's got a decade-long experience in Indian retail with stints at Metro Cash, Britannia, Raymond, before he decided to start Dealshare. Medda identified the trend of democratization of internet very early on in India and launched one of the first startups in this new commerce space to target the WhatsApp-first India Bharat consumer. I've had the privilege of having multiple conversations where he's coached me, told me about how India shops, and looking forward to some insights from him on that.
Thanks, Siddharth.
Great. Up next, we have Umang. Umang, great to see you. We can't see, there you are. Yes, I can see you on video as well. I know you've had some challenges joining, but I'm glad we can see you now. I've known Umang for a long time. Umang used to be at Facebook and ran Facebook in India. Before that, he was also MD of Adobe and in India and other emerging markets. And more recently, he's really been at the forefront of taking Daily Hunt and Josh to the levels that they are today. Umang is, like Medda, someone who's identified the next tier of consumers, really gone after the local vernacular market rather than, focusing on English like everybody else did, and has really been at the forefront of developing and innovating some very new models in the media space. So Umang, very excited to have you here and to hear more about it.
Hey, thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Next up, we have Mr. Thampy Koshy. I've known him since the days when he was a partner at eBay. Mr. Koshy, really glad to have you here. Mr. Koshy has been leading the charge to democratize online commerce in India by making ONDC a major force for change. Everyone in the audience and in India is looking forward to the action as it unfolds. Glad to have you, Mr. Koshy.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Next, we have Mr. Yinglang Tan. He's the founder and managing partner at Insignia Ventures. Insignia Ventures is an early stage technology venture fund focusing on Southeast Asia that was started in 2017 and manages capital from institutions across Asia, Europe, and North America. He's also on the board of multiple startups in Southeast Asia, giving him a ringside view of the growing startup ecosystem in Southeast Asia and China. Glad to have you on board.
So we have this very exciting panel, but maybe, let me just kick you off with talking about a little bit of data, just to set the context for the discussion ahead, and then we'll pivot quickly into a few questions. Before I get started, I did want to say that the interface allows you to ask a few questions. So as you as we set the context and as you hear from the panelists, please do post any questions that you have, and Siddharth and I will moderate and pick a few and direct them to the relevant panelists. So let me kick off by saying that, I talked about the fact that that the growth tech and consumer tech space is closest to my heart, and I've watched closely as this has really taken off. About a decade ago, as BCG, we started tracking what we called the digital consumer in India. This was at a time where most people believed it was too premature and digital wasn't really large. And, we used to have conversations around, do you really need to do e-commerce and does digital marketing matter? The good thing now is we don't have to have that conversation. But what that has given us is really a temporal view of how this has changed over the last decade. And, I'm thrilled to report, a few important numbers. If you look at digital influence, so today we have close to half the population in India are active on the internet and are digitally enabled. About 250 million people are actually actively influenced in terms of digital shopping, and they decide what to buy online, and close to 200 million are actually transacting online. While these numbers have continued to grow at a secular pace, what we did see is during COVID is a step change, and what we've seen is almost an advancement of anywhere between 2 to 4 years depending on the category, where things have moved much faster than ever before. So we're seeing an accelerated growth. And what this has also done, this growth comes at the back when half the population, if we move to the next slide, is online. This is no longer what we used to call the 3 M's of a metro millennial male. We're actually seeing the internet population now democratizing across and starting to reflect, a much more distributed demographic. And if you look at, new shoppers who are and new internet consumers who've really come on, who are transacting today, they look very different from the first wave of internet shoppers. And let me point out a few things, right? They're older. So we're seeing, over a third of people who are new users coming on are over 45 years of age. For some of us, that doesn't feel so old, but when we look at the demographic overall, that is the older population. Close to half of them are women, which was not true of the first wave. over 40% of them, actually close to 50% are next billion, which is consumers who have household incomes of less than about 3 lakhs a year. So we're real, and last but not the least is close to 70% of these new users come from small towns and rural areas. So we're looking at, while there continues to be a large and active internet population in the top 100 million consumers in the country who are affluent consumers sitting in large towns, we're starting to see older, more women, and less affluent consumers in small towns and rural areas becoming really significant. And and what that translates into really is, go to the next page, the need for very different models to go after these consumers. They have different needs, they have different buying patterns. I see Medda, nodding away, and we're going to come to you soon to try and decide how you pick that up much before anyone else did. But they have different needs, they have different buying behavior, they have different barriers and requirements on everything, right from the proposition to what you sell to them, to how you sell and the interface and the experience. We've seen in markets like China that these alternate models today are over $300 billion. They account for anywhere between 15 to 20% of the Chinese internet economy. In India, those numbers are still very small. It's only $2 billion. It is less than 5% of the overall e-commerce market. But we believe very strongly that going over the next decade, we're going to see significant growth there. So without further ado, and whether these are assisted commerce or group buying, or video-based conversational commerce, there are multiple models out there. We do believe that this is going to become much larger. This is an important premise that we put out in our report. We also believe that that a copy paste of what happened in China is not what's going to work in India, and the models that will succeed here need to be adapted to who the Indian consumer is. But without further ado, and without taking you to more slides, I'm going to pause here and switch over to our panel to really get their insights on how they've experienced the space. Yeah, and maybe to kick us off, Umang, I'm going to start with you. Umang, you identified a white space in the media space, and maybe with Daily Hunt as the first offering. Instead of going after English, which is what everyone did, you said not even Hindi, but really local vernacular content, which is a very large population in India. How this would have involved a lot of rethinking. You couldn't copy what Times of India was doing or anyone else. You needed to really think about adapting the model, understanding these consumers. How did you really approach this challenge? And what were some of your, what are some of the most interesting learnings you had in this journey? And it'll be great if you talk to us both about what you did at Daily Hunt, but also, you're going through a similar journey now with Josh, where again, you're pioneering to say, we've got a lot of these people on, and how do I monetize them? So maybe a bit of both.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Nimisha. I really, really appreciate that input. So firstly, I speak on behalf of, Viru and me, always, that about me. So, I'm going to tee it off from that level as well. So I think Viru and I have 3 core beliefs, and have always had this for the last 5 to 7 years, right? I think the first one is really that the internet is pivoting, and it is going to pivot in terms of audiences that are coming in. And we saw that post-geo. But clearly, the next billion people that are coming online are going to be audiences from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 rural, and they're going to consume content in local language, right? That's a no-brainer, because that reflects the demographics of the country, where 250 million people in India speak English or understand it to a certain degree. And the remaining 550 million people is Hindi, 250 million people is 4 South Indian languages, 150 million Gujarati, and Marathi, 100 million Bengali and Odia. And you add up the math, that comes up to about 1.1 billion, and about 200 million people is another 10 to 15 different primary languages, right? So one, we had that core belief. The second core belief was that the duopoly of Google and Facebook is not going to be best served to serve this opportunity. Fundamentally because at the top of the funnel, which is what these platforms are really built on, they each personalize content basis 2 very different algorithms. Google works on a search algorithm. Facebook works on a social graph-based algorithm, right? So whereas when you think about companies like ByteDance in China, they've really proven out the scale of content graphs, where you minimize asking users too many contradictory questions, or questions that could be interruptions in the journey, and you really build out content graphs. And so that's the second piece that we believed in. And the third piece that we always had a core belief in is if you're able to do this at scale, you have the ability to build the ByteDance of India. Now that is, I'm going to get really controversial here for a second. That is the most abused statement that I've seen 100 startups pitch it out, even when they're raising Series A and they talk to founders like us. Because being the ByteDance of India means four things. It means you have the ability to have crazy user growth, lots of good engagement, very high degrees of fast-growing monetization, but most important, profitability, right? Now, that comes to the India that we live in. Let's not kid ourselves. We are going to be, the rising, shining nation in the next 5 years, 10 years. By 2047, you already saw predictions that came from the chief of Invest India, very inspiring numbers, attracting a whole bunch of FDI. We'll be the creative workforce for the world. But today, we're a poor country. Okay, at 3.5 or 3.4 trillion GDP per capita, total GDP divided by 1.4 plus billion people, you're talking about an average $2,000. And when you think about consumption, the guy at $2,000 is not really a consumer. He or she is living from, from EMI to EMI or loan to loan. So the trick of the trade is, how do you identify monetizable audiences, right? Now, when you think about the growth hack model that the Chinese have used so successfully, it worked beautifully in China because you're talking about a market which 15 years ago had a GDP per capita of $3,500, which today is about $15,000 or $12,000, right? It's a highly monetizable market, but I think what the Chinese growth hack model, which is being used by several companies, UC Web, UC News, tons of Chinese companies that came into the market was around, and by the way, Indian companies as well, is around racy, raunchy, hacky content, grow the user base, get more virality out of that content. The problem in India is that it attracts a very, very non-monetizable audience today, right? Typically at someone at $2,000 GDP per capita or below, right? And with 800 million cell phones, you are largely touching a bulk of the population, right? 1 billion people below 30 is the number that we are looking at. So I think our focus really was around, one, build content graphs, but build it with very high quality content. Two, ensure that the content, even you get a lot of junk onto the platform, weave it out such that you can attract monetizable audiences. The third is invest in tech, very deep tech around monetization, right? So I think we started our ARML labs 6 years ago, built out our own ad tech stack. And I'm not saying we're number one, okay? We have a long way to go. I mean, there's a long way to move ahead. But that was a very significant portion around engaging on tech, because we don't have any shops, we don't have any people on the street, we don't have any delivery boys, we don't have anything physical. We're a hardcore digital business, right? And so I think we did three things right. One was ingest content and ensure that there is revenue share for partners who create that content, which is the creators of all shapes and sizes. Second is built out very deep tech to understand content at scale across text, audio, video, viral cards in 16 languages. The third was build out ad tech by which you can start monetization and pay the creators back so that you revenue share with creators. And four, growth hack at scale with high quality content, right? That attracts the right audiences. Now, I think that journey has been fairly successful. Daily Hunt's now at over $200 to $250 million in revenue. 10% EBITDA positive, been EBITDA positive for a year. So that's been pretty awesome. Josh is a whole different ballgame, right? Because you're dealing with short video just on the back of a China app ban, which is how we launched it. So you're kind of a Me Too product in a category that has been established by TikTok, that has spent about 5 years in that journey of establishing that category. And it went from, hey, TikTok's racy and raunchy to, hey, TikTok's really cool to be on, right? And today, I would say to the extent that TikTok is shaping cultural phenomena in the US and Canada, right? Because 50% of the users there, or 55% of their monthly active users are creators. So they're not stalkers like you and me on an old social network where we just log in to see what our friends are doing, but they're actually creating content, right? And so I think Josh has been a journey wherein we've invested in deep tech, very similar kind of, models that we have in terms of the recommendation engine, in terms of the ad tech, in terms of everything else. And now after 2 years of scaling it to an appreciable user base is where we've really begun the journey of monetization and hoping to break even in the next 18 months. But it's really hard in short video because unlike organized content that comes in the space of text and images, short video is untagged. So you first have to develop the capability of understanding the content and the context of the video, seeing who likes what, whose affinity is to what, by seeing how user behavior is behaving on that content. So it's a two-sided equation. On the supply side, you have to understand the supply because it's unorganized. And on the demand side, you then need to understand what is their affinity. And then downstream, you've got to help brands, advertisers, commerce, and build a new models, which is not just advertising, but moving to digital commerce, moving to virtual gifting, tipping, so on and so forth. So I don't think we've solved it all. I think it's a journey. We're 2.5 years in, but hopefully in the next 18 months, the entire company breaks EBITDA positive in that journey as Josh actually breaks out both on revenue and profitability. So I think that's why creating the Byte Dance of India, and I'll just summarize to that point, which most companies have forgotten, is that you have to have revenue and profitability. Otherwise, all of these mouse and dial metrics make no sense, because at the end of the day, you may not have a real business.
Thanks, Umang, for that. Medda, my next question is to you, right? As we expect more and more 30 to 40 million consumers, as presented by BCG, should come in online every year, with a larger share from the middle class, people tier 2 towns, exactly the kind of people that you cater to. How do you feel the needs of these consumers are different from the ones that we all are used to across metro tier 1? And how did Dealshare kind of target them, and what models did Dealshare come up with to cater to this customer segment?
Yeah, I think just to give a background of our journey also, we started like in late of 2018, when we basically looked at this whole opportunity, which was beyond only the metros or beyond the, let's say, SEC A+, because at that time, if you look at the whole e-commerce space, it was primarily, the consumer was primarily the upper income class of the society. And the players also were like, we had like 4 big players at that time. On one side, we had Amazon, Flipkart, and then we had obviously the 2 grocery players also operating at that time. And mostly we would assume that a shopper who has basically adopted some kind of Western models of shopping, which was like a planned shopping mission going, the people like us are very busy in our day. So, and that is why we go into a weekly shopping mission on the weekend. So e-commerce was trying to replicate the physical modern retail format, let's say what Big Bazaar was doing, or let's say a Reliance was doing, that getting into the e-commerce model. Similar weekly shopping model was prevalent at that time. But when we started, we actually saw that the next billion, and in fact, if I look at the slides that Nimisha also presented, that the next billion is the one, that bucket is actually going to consume more internet and also getting into, over time, getting into transacting on internet, right? So that's the journey we actually picked up at that time. Obviously, we did not have any precedence, because like Umang also pointed out, that the per capita income is very low and we are a country which basically has to monetize all of the work from that small per capita income. While it's a large population, so the country has the benefit of a huge, let's say, demand pool that lies because of a large population. However, the per unit monetization capability or ability is very low, whether it is content or commerce or anything. Wherever you go, you launch a service platform, all of it has that big challenge of how we basically monetize that single unit or a single customer, because the ability to spend is very less per capita. Right? So that is where we started building the whole model. And obviously we also had the challenge that the existing e-commerce players were themselves burning a lot of money at that time. So 2018 was already 8-10 years of e-commerce, and while they were focusing on, let's say, the top tier of the population, I would not say that it is only metro, let's say the top tier income strata of the population, yet in spite of billions of dollars being invested, they were not still profitable. So we had to think of a model which would go down that strata to the middle income, or the belly of the Indian population as far as income strata is concerned, and think of a model which can basically make sense as far as unit economics is concerned over time. So that is how we started building. Now, lots of first principle based work we had to do, because there was nothing that we could copy or nothing we could take from Indian ecosystem, at least understand. And the most important part was to understand the consumers first. So we met a lot of consumers in this middle income strata, and not just in metros. We actually went to smaller tiers of cities and towns to understand why and how they would come onto organized retail, and why have they not come? What are the motivators and as well as the barriers for them? So eventually we found out that it is very important for them to get a very localized environment. So the reason they have been going to kiranas or other mom and pop stores was because they felt that that local environment is what they relate to. Even if there is a less saving, it is still a relation that they will get the local assortment, the local feel, and all of that. So that's extremely important. Second, they would not understand the interface of an app, which is basically more Western-like in terms of the experience that they provide. Even if they know that there is a lot of discount there, but they would not understand, and hence they would not be able to use that interface. So that was one of the big barriers that they said. Third, they said that their per capita income is low, so their propensity to spend is also low. So if you have a huge discount running on something which is not relevant for the mass population, let's say there is a laptop which is at 50% discount, but it's not relevant for the mass population, it doesn't make sense for them. So they're looking at savings for something where it is relevant. So the kirana is keeping relevant articles, and they are basically looking for something which can give a larger saving than kirana on that set of article, or let's say similar articles. So that's the third thing. And fourth, from an internal perspective also, we had to see, because we were also trying to solve this whole unit economics barrier that e-commerce had. Two things we had to tackle is how do we get these consumers onboarded and also get them to retransact with us, because this is a commerce model that to keep on transacting with us at very low cost and not burn a lot of marketing dollars, which was the problem of e-commerce, and still is a problem that we are basically trying to tackle every time as the e-commerce play. And the second part is, since they also spend less, their average bill values are also low. So at that small bill value, how do you service those consumers and still make unit economics work? So I think those are the big questions that we had to tackle while building this model. And as rightly said by Umang, obviously we can take a lot of basically inspirations from Chinese models or Western models. Obviously, PDD of China has been a very good inspiration for us as far as basically how to get virality and how to do gamification models to bring the mass consumers upfront onto commerce and make them transact with us. And similarly, we have taken a lot of basically inspiration on the supply side, going deeper into SME segment of grocery and essentials, and get the SMEs onboarded with us, and some of it keeping the assortment very short, like 1,000 or 1,500 SKUs per location. All of that inspiration is coming from, let's say, Costco or Aldi, or let's say even in Indian context, some of it is in DMart. But at the end of it, you just get inspirations. You have to put all of that together and create a model which suits your TG. So we chose that TG, which is going to Kirana, not gone to any physical retail model also, and then skip the beat of physical retail and move on to e-commerce completely. So I think lots of innovation there, first principle based innovation, both on supply as well as on the marketing side and in terms of operation side. And maybe we can talk in details further as we progress in this session. I will not take a lot of time of others. We should hear others as well as to what their journey is, but happy to share more when we come to that.
Thanks, Medda. Quite a contrast from the quick commerce models that are more prevalent in the metro cities.
Yes.
Next question would be towards Yinglang. Yinglang, you've had the privilege of being in Southeast Asia and China, seeing the journeys of multiple companies, while Umang's partially answered the question from an India standpoint. But wanted to understand from your vantage point, you would have seen companies like Pinduoduo, Taobao Live, Lazada, Shopee, WeChat. Given your experience, what have been the key factors for the success of these models in Southeast Asia and China?
Thanks for the invite. And I would say I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about Indian commerce, but I'm happy to share thoughts on other geographies. And to start on a happy note, actually, a day ago, Prime Minister Modi and our Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee, just signed an agreement to send and receive money from India's UPI and Singapore's Pay Now. So I think there's interesting things, interesting trend that probably will see more commerce globally. So I think from our perspective of looking at trends in China and Southeast Asia, I think the China model is actually quite intriguing in the sense that it has well, if you look at China now and China 5 years ago, it's a night and day, right? Right now, commerce has actually, in terms of new innovation, have trickled to a standstill. I mean, a lot of the regulatory impetus has been is sort of the headwind for more innovation. But if you look at China 5 years ago, you look at a lot of interesting social, mobile, global AI-driven innovation. And I think if you look at, and I got my team to look at some of the trends in India, which is quite intriguing, which is we looked at, and my numbers could be wrong, but if we looked at some of the equity structures of own founders in some of the Indian commerce companies, I think our conclusion was that the average founder actually owns 5%. I think the highest was 7.5%. So actually, I think if you look at Pinduoduo, the founders still own actually like 50%. So I think the amount of capital that a company took in China and the dilution that the founder took in China versus India, I think is quite different. And I think that plays to the monetization point made earlier by Umang and some of the ARPU points as well, right? Because if it's harder to monetize in India, I think the capital required is much higher. I think the other trend that we saw is the multiple compression in commerce, right? And Baba notwithstanding, because there are some regulatory challenges. But I think we look at commerce in other sort of geographies. You look at ASOP. I mean, this is a company with 1-2 billion GMV. Is trading at like less than $1 billion. Rakuten, they have like 15 billion revenue. Market cap is like 17 billion. So and I think if you combine the two stories, which is the multiple compression and the equity structure of some of the commerce companies, I think that suggests that actually that there has to be a new way to invest in commerce. And that's some of the things we are seeing in Southeast Asia as well, which is that, hey, I think there's a new generation of commerce companies emerging, one that actually, instead of the traditional VC model, is using debt as leverage, right, to essentially build full stack models where they use debt to fund working capital, inventory. I think that essentially you look at Warby Parker, Allbirds, the iconic brands, but I think now they're starting to see how they can use debt to fund account receivables. I think that's one interesting trend that we see. I think the second trend, which I think Umang pointed out, was I think the nature of commerce is changing with the application of AI. And I think this we are seeing more in Southeast Asia, which is how to sell products, discover products, using ChatGPT in various sectors, B2B. I think the natural language is a very interesting interface for this product discovery. And I think we're seeing some of the companies with best-in-class unit economics. And I think the third one, which is my earlier point on this whole UPI and pay now cross-border piece is that I think commerce is now global, right? So we are seeing all forms of global commerce, manufacture in China, sold in India, manufacture in China, sold in Middle East, and all sorts of permutation in between. So I think one of the things we have in Southeast Asia is actually a lot of companies are now headquartered in Singapore, including Flipkart, but they are they have Indian investors, they have Indian engineering teams, but they are now headquartered in Singapore, but targeting the world, right? So and they are now we're starting to see lots of companies building full stack. If you look at the sort of India pharma distribution ecosystem, I think we're starting to see this being applied to other industries like cosmetics, for example, right? We have a full stack cosmetic chain in Indonesia, but it's targeting global distribution. Similar stuff in China, we see in Shenzhen, owning the full stack. We are seeing this in even used car marketplaces like Caro, which I'm on the board of. We're seeing this in Fish, like Fishlock is a company that's also quite interesting. So I think that sort of three sort of interesting trends where it's new generation that is funded by equity and debt. I think second one is using new models of AI, ChatGPT, and the third one is a global cross-border type of commerce that we're seeing.
Thank you.
Great. I think that's just incredibly fascinating. And, we'll come to sort of starting to link these together. But just to move this forward, Gaurav, moving to you, and this is a good segue from what Yinglang was talking about. We've seen in other markets, China, for example, close to 20% of e-commerce actually uses new e-commerce models. In Southeast Asia, again, the numbers are, are close to that. India, less than 5% of e-commerce is still using, these alternate models. E-commerce continues to be the more traditional e-commerce, which is on, horizontal and now some vertical marketplaces. I know you have personally been very invested in actually in exploring some of these new models, and you've seen them at play in other markets. You're also trying to bring some of that to play in India. My question to you is to talk a bit about what that journey has been like. What do you see as the similarities and differences between India and other markets? And what do you think it will really do, or what do you think is really needed for these new commerce models to take off in India? So do you really see them as being important to drive the next wave of growth, which is, our assertion right now? And if so, what will it take to make it happen?
No, definitely. So Nimisha, let me first start from the slide you were showing, right? So around 800 million internet users, only 20-25% of them are buying. If you look into China, it's around 80% of internet penetration is buying on. And if you take appliances and electronics out, this penetration drops very sharply. So for example, in beauty, we estimate less than 5% of internet population is actually buying beauty online. And that becomes the fact of why not. It is very deeply penetrated, nearly 99% of pin codes is available. Sometimes available at an affordability lower than, in GT. So why are people not buying? And obviously there are reasons around security and quality. But one thing that strikes is the experience. The consumer likes the convenience of e-commerce. They like the pricing on e-commerce, but they still need to talk to people, try products before they buy. And that's why if we bring the experiences offline and the convenience of online, I think we will be triggering a big penetration. In India, we started this attempt by creating, virtual try-ons for makeup. And we have just in the last year, we have seen nearly 25 million times the virtual try-ons have been used on Nike alone. And everybody who's trying nearly 1.7x better conversion. So we have got the pulse, and this is a very, very crucial need of consumers to get a right kind of experience. So we are also exploring the other element that we are looking to explore is how to use consultation at a scale of democratizing, like, e-commerce democratized distribution is a potential to democratize consultation. Right? And some early results are showing very, very promising impact. When people are able to talk to, experts and get their queries addressed, we see conversion of 50 to 80% on some of our brands. These are the trends. You asked about how we look at it from a global perspective. L'Oreal has a big presence in China, and we learn a lot from how we are selling on Tmall. And we are seeing increasingly with the influx of intent-based traffic now saturating, the need to make people discover products on these e-commerce platforms is increasing. Like nearly a third of new transactions in beauty on Tmall is now happening after conversations. So we are seeing this across categories in beauty, in makeup, derma cosmetics, across markets like China, Indonesia, Brazil. So we are quite confident that this is going to be the next wave of growth. You asked an interesting question on, okay, what are the barriers and why is this not happening? I think there are two mainly. One, we look into a line from Japan or WeChat from China or even a TikTok in Indonesia. We have an end-to-end shop. We still know, while only 20-25% of internet population is buying, nearly 70 to 80% of them are on social media and chat messaging. So if we can combine these 80% of consumers who are on social media and messaging to convert to purchase then and there, it's a big opportunity. TikTok Indonesia has just done that with their end-to-end shops where you can converse with them and actually make a purchase. WeChat has had it for the longest. But in India, for example, the deepest penetrated chat platforms like WhatsApp, we still don't have a shop there, right? Or you can watch a content on YouTube, but still you can't shop there. So the platform is not giving an integrated approach of discover and shop immediately. So that's one. And the second, these are all forms of direct to consumer reach. And while you have on your websites a very templatized way of how to create a D2C website, designing consumer journeys for direct to consumer outreach is not very easy. It requires a lot of insights, it requires a lot of data, and requires a lot of tech. So we are hoping, with the right set of partners, we are able to crack this for beauty and for India.
Perfect. No, absolutely. Shopping is so much more than the actual transaction, right? And combining the experience of offline with the convenience of online. I think that that absolutely rings a bell.
Over to Mr. Thampy. When it comes to building for India and in India, we've seen great success with the India Stack and UPI. ONDC is another initiative, a path-breaking one, where everyone's hoping and has their keen eyes on this. How do you expect ONDC to change the commerce landscape in India?
Thank you. Since we have a very broad audience from all over the world, and I'll start with the context that all of you are familiar, is that one is, if you look at any transactions, commercial transaction of goods or services, there are two parts to it. One is the money movement, other is the goods and service, contracting for goods and service, searching, selection, and contracting. So what we did in India in the money movement side was what they call the UPI, which is essentially unbundling and interoperability, enabling multiple entities to give different building blocks of commerce and having a protocol that helped to stitch together the end-to-end experience. That's what we did, which is what is unique in what we did in the payment side. And you saw what happened in the last 6 years' time. So now we are saying into the next level on the goods and service side is to do the same thing. To say, can we help unbundling of the building blocks of commerce and provide a protocol that will help these building blocks to be stitched together to get seamless commerce to the buyer and seller, independent of whether they are all coming from the same platform or different platforms. So what is the long-term view of possibilities? Is that every enterprise which is a product or service to offer to a broad cross-section of customers, and they have a catalog to offer that to these customers, will make these catalogs digitally visible in this open network using this open protocol. So it is, in that sense, it is a marginal effort by any of these producers. And it's also giving a lot of confidence to, like somebody pointed out, all the various innovators that I can see around, helping different kinds of products and services to be made available in this open network. And now you would see on the other side, there will be innovation coming of who's going to bring different kinds of buyers using all varieties of excitement, whether it is virtual reality or whether it is AI, whether it is ML, whether it is segmentation, whatever it is, to really be the buyer's agent and to attract the buyers to help buy what they want. So today, if you look at many of you guys are building different models, what are the challenges? If you are the guys who are trying to bring different kinds of focuses on the supply side, you have a big challenge to say that how do I get sufficient demand? And if you are a little relatively larger focus on the unique model of getting and the demand, attracting different kind of customers, how are you going to get all kinds of products to those customers? You are limited by the sellers whom you can list. Or if you're on the seller side, you're limited by the customers you can attract by and establish yourself. And now when you have many of the merchants, they're saying that how many places I will be. So these become the challenge. So the advantage of an idea of an open commerce, we are just removing this fundamental friction. Everything is left to the imagination and innovation of the enterprises. So if you change your mental model from a platform-centric approach, where everything is provided by one entity using some proprietary protocol, creating what we call the walled gardens. Think like the in an open market, like in the physical market, or like in the information dissemination, which is in the Internet 1.0 or in email. See that each enterprises will have their own unique features, but they all use a common language to talk the common areas of interest. And that's the only thing that ONDC is enabling. And that, I believe, is going to give humongous possibilities for innovations and specialization, and also to, to experiment. And that's the reason we are seeing big enterprises like on one side, HUL and Unilever and, ITC on one side, to Google and Microsoft, to startups, etc., saying that I can come in with my kind of innovation to address my kind of customer, whether it is a seller or a buyer. Okay. And that, I believe, is going to be the fundamental transformation that we are seeing. So like I said, every seller will make their catalog visible, and there'll be unique and innovative buyer platforms coming to help their customer base to buy everything what those customer base want to buy. It could be goods, it could be service, it could be air ticket, it could be hailing of a taxi for their clients type of customers. If you're looking at the A-list customers, they will try to search for them the kind of product that they want. If you're trying to run a discount store, they're trying to look at that. If you're trying to look at young, smart, TikTok watching, young crowd to be attracted, okay, what are the kind of products that is interesting for them? Go and search it out for that. So that is a kind of transformation that we are expecting. And we are getting substantial traction and belief in this. So we have a variety of enterprises who are under various stages of integration, both at the buyer side and seller side. And I believe that that is going to be the building blocks that we will see in the coming few years of digital transformation in India. And we also see a lot of global interest, because the proprietary model seems to be a challenge in the developed country and developing countries. And in developed countries, US and America is trying to address this through regulation. Whereas in India, we are saying that we are not going that way. We're looking at technology and market to address the same issue, which is essentially to make the market a more fairer place, which everybody has equal opportunity, and success is a function of what they have to offer, and not that they have some stranglehold on some particular segment of sellers and buyers. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks, sir. We have a few questions that have started coming in from the audience. I think the first question is towards you. People want to understand, there are early pilots that people have seen, but people want to understand the current state. If you are at liberty to share some of that data, would be very helpful for the audience.
Some of the big picture view, if I say that, since it's something new for ONDC, there's no central system that we can just switch on and say that, come, let's use it. It's for ONDC, we are like a choreographer. We create the music sheet and the steps, and we need to get lots of people to come together and dance to the tune and agree on dance to a tune. That's a challenge. So the beauty is that everybody thinks that it's a tune that will work. So, but we want to do it in a slow and steady fashion to give conviction at every stage and build on an organic fashion, because it was never attempted anywhere. So in the last 3 months, we have been running the test in a very, very limited fashion without, doing any active outreach by either the buyer application or seller application. So from September to October to December, we saw something like 1,000 merchants coming, getting their friends and families to do something like 130 transactions in a day, and it's in grocery and food. And now, if you look at in the last 2.5 months, we found that 1,000 merchants became 20,000 merchants. Daily transactions became like something like 200 to 250 transactions. Then fashion, beauty, and multiple segments are all almost completion. In the next 2-3 months, you would see practically all major section of the products, including mobility. Mobility is already live, is coming. So we are seeing the next, if I just say we were on the first year, we have come to the second year. And what we are attempting to do is to probably by end of April or something, we are expecting that we will have some 5,000 to 10,000 transactions a day, with at least even hyperlocal delivery available in 100 cities, and logistics, intercity logistics available in practically all pin codes, because we have people like delivery and ship rocket, etc., already live on the logistics side. We have people like Paytm already live. PhonePe is just doing on a CUG testing. Will they make it live soon? And Airtel and banks and many of them on the buy side, sellers are large number of them. So they're all, they all need some, time to get the system up and running and going. But we feel that that's a kind of step. If you remember, UPI in 2016 is launched. Being a national level estimate like this, it takes few months to build the momentum and then it takes off. That's what we are hoping to happen. And that's a kind of signals that is coming from the market.
I think next question, Medda, is more for you. Given you were already selling in the tier 2 markets and beyond, people want to understand with fellow entrepreneurs, which categories in D2C are expected to grow, especially keeping in mind that online shopping is increasing in tier 2.
Yeah, I think I see a large shift in people's mind to get to branded but affordable branded space across most of the categories of regular consumption. So effectively, the middle income household has been challenged to buy. Basically, the big challenge is they've been buying loose articles from the neighborhood kirana. Now, I believe that the next wave would be to package those goods in high quality and yet make it really affordable by cutting the sales and marketing cost. Now, it would come in regular household categories. I think all of FMCG, which is home care, personal care, and packed foods, would see a huge shift towards this affordable branded space as far as D2C is concerned.
Anyone else on the same? Gaurav, you also have a good vantage point. Any thoughts on this?
So the D2C space, what we are seeing, the elements, the category that we expect D2C to grow also includes beauty. But when you look at some of the upcoming D2C, especially luxury, they are giving a much stronger consumer experience than what is available on any of the marketplaces. Be it the kind of sampling that they're providing, be it the kind of live streaming, the ask to expert capabilities, and the video consultations. These are very critical consumer experiences which will drive much more conversions. So we do expect that, especially for premium beauty, this category is going to be growing within D2C space. So it's very difficult. We ourselves have launched into Kerastars and Longcom, looking into the fact that some of these brands which are niche and in premium section requires a lot of consumer and brand expression that sometimes is restricted on the marketplaces. I think in that niche, we will definitely see a lot of beauty brands grow as well.
Awesome.
Super.
Don't have too much time left. There are multiple questions pouring in. I think one question was around the group buying model, if it's taken off in India. Medda, any thoughts on that?
I think again, quickly I would like to answer because of lack of time, so I'll take it in a very short manner. So essentially, see, group buying, again, we had to Indianize. So we took this inspiration from the Chinese models where group buying was happening in a different format. We have basically Indianized in a manner that there are groups being made, they all come together, they buy on the platform, but not really in exactly the same manner that the Chinese models are doing. So we are basically creating a referral model or a sharing model and bringing traffic through influence. So let's say customers are bringing more customers, whether it is first-time customers or repurchase customers within their family and friend network. We have to basically make it in a manner that the less digital savvy Indian consumers are also able to do that together with friends and family members.
Great. Maybe Umang, one question to you on your views on the applicability of influencer and live video commerce. And that's one question from the audience. And then I had, one rapid fire question for all of you before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll go very quickly on it. So here's what we're seeing. We're seeing that every brand, no matter large or small, Gaurav alluded to this, is really looking at innovative ways to reach market other than just advertising. And I think there's this whole concept around earned media, around word of mouth, around driving it through influence. And I believe influencers are real. I believe that it is a real opportunity. I believe all brands, barring none, are engaging with them. I think we're living in sensitive times. Brands will continue to engage with celebrities that make sense. But over time, I think they will add a layer to improve ROAS or return on advertising sales around influencer marketing. We think it is such a big opportunity that we've created what we believe now is the largest tech-based influencer marketplace where we connect brands with influencers across our platform and any third-party platform, including all the global platforms. And there's a very interesting play there wherein for, let's say, the largest e-commerce company in the country, we power their end-to-end influencer marketing, right? Just as an example. So I believe it is really real. I think to the point that Gaurav alluded that can video be made more shoppable? Can that be made more contextual? Can the buying experience be made more easy? I believe that there is a journey to be covered by all of us on the tech stacks that we have, and it will take some time. But I think influencer marketing is here and now. And I think it is a massive, massive area. The recent report saying that it's a 2,000 crore market is a little bit of BS in my mind. I already know when I add the revenues of maybe 10 companies in this space, it's a 3,000-4,000 crore business today, and growing very, very fast. In fact, I would argue maybe growing even faster than the ad market per se. And so that's exactly how I'd frame it. I think it's a very big opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, this has been an incredibly interesting conversation. I think just a lot of validation on the tremendous size of the opportunity, the nature. But just to wrap up, I'm going to do 2 rapid fire questions for you. In order to keep it sharp, the answers have to be 1 word each. So 2 questions. If you had to bet on one e-commerce model and invest your own personal dollars in, which one would it be? And the second one. The second question is, if you had to describe 1 word, if you had to use 1 word to describe, the future of the Indian consumer tech opportunity, what word would that be? So the future of the one thing that you would invest in and how you describe the future of consumer tech in India.
And maybe, I got to run.
Maybe Umang will go with you first. Yeah, that's
okay,
fine.
Thanks.
Okay.
The 1 word would be influencer marketing and management. I believe in it. I think it's a big area. And the 1 word to describe what I think about the opportunity, the fortunes at the bottom of the pyramid. No, that's a sentence. Sorry.
That's all right.
Excited. Excited.
Okay,
fantastic. Medda, you go next.
So obviously, e-commerce company I would put on my own company. Dealshare is the answer. And second, I think 1 word for it is humongous. It's a humongous opportunity we are looking forward to.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yinglang?
AI powered and global for the first one, and then massive for the second one.
Fantastic. Gaurav?
So for the first one, I would bet on a conversational-led commerce in India. And for the second one, the future of commerce in India, social.
Super. Koshy? Sorry, you're on mute.
Now, one area I'm betting on is an open commerce.
Yes.
And naturally, and 1 word for the future is innovation.
Fantastic. Great. No, thank you so much. It's been just absolutely incredible to have you. I think some very, very exciting and insightful nuggets for our audience. The whole conversation around understanding the tremendous size of the opportunity, obviously, but the need for adaptation, the fact that while many people are online, there's just so much deeper penetration, just getting them to start shopping and to transact, but also the fact that there's this huge opportunity in adapting what we've seen outside, but really creating something that's the unique India way. So thank you so much for being with us. Just thank you for being a great audience. And sorry we couldn't answer all the questions, but it's been a fantastic conversation. So I think I'm going away with many new ideas and looking forward to keeping this conversation going. Please do join us for our next session. We'll reach out to each of you with more details of this. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.